each other in a second, but I wanted to first of all thank you for agreeing to spend your time with us. It doesn't sound like a very exciting thing, but the reality is we're all Howard County residents and we all love this county. And I like to tell people who, when I travel or meet people from other places, that Howard County is a geographically large, small town. And I don't know how many people I hugged on the way in because I know them and it's just the way we are. And we want to make sure that we continue to maintain the high quality of life that brings people to Howard County and that we've grown to enjoy. We're going to do some brief introductions of the committee members here, and I think we do have some, a handful of you are from the general public, right? Not on the committee? Okay, let me see. Know who's who. And if you can just kind of say your name, your profession, if that's why you're here, or your community ties, what relationship you have, and why do you think you're here, I should say, because I'm sure some of you have more than one reason for being here with the APFO, and review that in terms of how it's affecting our county right now, and if we need to make any changes or not. First person I will turn to is Cole Schnorr, who is the co-chair of the committee. Vice chair, whatever. Your help.
So I'm Cole Schnorr, I'm with Mannington, I'm a commercial real estate developer, and I was also on the last APFO Task Force that was 12 years ago or so. And so hopefully I won't have to do much as vice chair and then show up one night.
I'm Richard Freeze. I've lived in the county in the southeast since 1980, and I retired from the fire department here after 37 years. I retired in 2007, and been in the community.
I'm Stu Cohn, and I'm the president of the Howard County Citizens Association, and we've been involved in a component of getting APFO revised for years. I hope that's done.
I'm Brett Douglas from North Laurel, multi-generation Howard County. Been a strong proponent to review APFO and made poor Mr. Kittleman's job and his predecessors very difficult by requesting this forum for some time. So I'm glad we have the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Reginald Avery. I am a member of the CA Board of Directors representing Northland Mills Village. I am also, as of Monday, I became the president of the PTA Council of Howard County. So I represent all 74 schools.
Hello, my name is Miriam Brockney, and I work on SAM, that's my job. I believe I'm part of this task force representing the American or Asian American community, and I am currently serving as president of the Women's Society.
I'm Diane Butler. I was the president of St. John's Community Association for about 10 years and on their zoning committee for about 14 years. I sat on 2 of the different info committees and also on the part of the Route 40 committee also. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Marcus, and I am a small business owner in City After Chair for almost 30 years. I'm on the Howard County Citizens Association board. I founded a political organization called People's Voice. When I ran for county council last year, I was very interested in APFO and be happy to be assessors.
Hi, I'm Anna Gannon. I'm a 6th and 8th grade teacher at Bonnie Branch Middle School, and also a long-standing member of the community. My grandfather was recruited to come to Howard County in the 50s to teach here at Suffolk High School.
I'm Dave Grabowski. I'm a lifetime Elkridge resident, former chair of the Howard County Planning Board, former chair of the Recreation Park Advisory Board.
I'm Heidi Gash. I'm a government affairs specialist and lobbyist. Right now I'm working as a legal assistant, and I was asked by Councilman Greg Fox to serve as the community representative for District 5.
I'm Abby Hendricks. I'm a teacher, but I'm not here in the capacity of a teacher, although I've had practice doing this when I lived in another county in Maryland, in Montgomery County. I've worked on this similar task force. But I was appointed by or recommended by Calvin Ball, councilman, and representing
Good evening. I'm Karen Lasser. Professionally, I'm the coordinator of strategic planning for the Howard County Public School System. But I'm here as a representative from the community, as my councilmember Mary T. Siggety, who was my former employer before I went back to the school system. I was her special assistant for a number of years.
My name is Joel Gallagher. I'm the manager of school planning for Howard County, and I live in Kendall Ridge. My name is John Start. I'm the president of JST Builders. I've been a builder in the county for almost 30 years, and I've had 2 daughters that went through the county school system.
I'm Jeff Brano, I'm chief of the research division in the Howard County Department of Planning and Zoning. And I have the fun job of administering APFO to keep track of everything. So that it works properly.
Steve Braden, my kids might be the 9th generation in Howard County. Been with security development for about almost 35 years. Anxious to see the county do well.
I'm Hattie Smallwood. I'm first a resident of Skaggsville, and proud to still stay a resident of Skaggsville. And second, I was a realtor for the last 30 years, and my husband and I are partners, and we also are both past presidents of Howard County Association of Realtors, and have served in many capacities between the county and the state with the realtors. Although I'm not appointed by the realtors, I was asked now.
Good evening, I'm Rick Wilson, a career educator with the school system here in Howard County, and father of 2 children in the school system, so a little busy. Happy to be here.
The principal filing board of rules.
I'm currently serving as principal of Allan H. Thank you.
I'm Sharon Lee Vogel. Several of you here know that I'm very active in transportation. I just stepped down as chair of the Public Transportation Board, and I have always been jumping up and down saying, well, why doesn't APFO cover that? And I said the same thing when I was on the General Plan Task Force several years ago. Well, they have to do something about the APFO. So I'm getting a little tired of saying it, so Alan didn't want to hear it. Yes, and said, okay, you want to do something here. I'm also very active on the Howard County Commission on Aging.
And we only have a couple of members of the public. If you want to just give us your name and if you have a particular reason for wanting to be here.
My name is Chad Edmondson. I'm Chief Development Engineering Division, Planning and Zoning, live in Mount Everett area.
My name is Eric Bob, I'm the Town Center Board. I'm Dwayne Wood, I'm the chair of the Town Center Board.
Good evening, I'm Jane Gavner. I'm Columbia Association's Director of Planning.
Joe Butler. Invited.
What is our featured speaker?
You know who you
Kittleman and
I'm Sandy Schrader. I'm Alan's Director of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Andy Vine, Special Assistant.
Oh, sure. And that's a refrigerator. Now the fire
Carl DiLorenzo, I work in the County Executive Office as well. I've been communicating with you all by email about the meeting tonight, and I'll probably continue to be communicating with you by email over the next several months, and happy to serve Diane, Cole, and all of you as you work on this hefty project for the remainder of the year. So if there's anything you need, you should have my contact information, and I'll be happy to help you in any way.
You're going to put towards this because it is really important to all of us in Howard County. And I just to give you a brief overview of what's going on, we will go through a series of meetings that will be educational in nature, and we will do the best we can to get all that information to you also, so you don't have to transcribe everything. And then we will, after that point, get to the point where we start really having discussions and meeting discussions. So don't feel like you need to say everything in the beginning. We all need to learn so we get up to the same level. We know what we're talking about. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Alan for a few remarks.
Very few. I want to thank Diane and Cole for being willing to take leadership of the group, but also all of you for agreeing to do this. This was one of the major issues during the campaign, as many of you know, if you followed the campaign last year. And so I wanted to make sure I had everyone who I thought needed to be a seat at the table here. There are some very diverse thoughts here, and that's important. We need to make sure that you guys can come together and talk about every issue. Everything should be on the table. As I've talked to Diane and Cole ahead of time, I have no agenda on this. I have no desire to be one way or the other. Kind of like I did with the Spending Affordability Committee, and they certainly came out with some ideas I probably wouldn't agree on. But I want you guys to have carte blanche, look at the law the way it is now. I don't want you to just look at one aspect of it. I want you to look at all of it and consider other ways to improve it. Because that's the only way we can make sure that we get a full review of this. And so I appreciate everyone for being here again. Anna Marie's talking about her grandfather, who was certainly a close friend of mine, my father's, and not only was he the principal of Harriet Tubman, he was the last principal of Harriet Tubman. Awesome gentleman, and came to our house many, many times when I was a kid. And yes, Rick Wilson is my brother from another mother. Literally, I go.
Compliment to me, not so good for him.
No. But we joke. My kids all went to Poly Quarter, and we joke about it. I'd go walk through Poly Quarter, they come up, Mr. Wilson. I'm like, what are you talking about? But anyway, again, thank you very, very much for doing this. I'm going to certainly pay close attention. I unfortunately do have to leave early tonight. My son needs me to pick him up at basketball practice. James has basketball practice, so I won't be able to stay that long tonight. But again, thank you very much for what you're doing. This is one of the probably more important things we're going to be doing the first year, and I appreciate you looking at that. Thank you, Diane.
One thing I do want to do is turn it over to Carl for a few minutes just to give us some administrative things like the fact that we are actually being recorded and talk about how we plan to do some things like that.
Sure. So tonight, our first meeting, we're in the Ascent 1 building. As you can see, it's limited in terms of space. So for all the subsequent meetings, we're going to be in George Howard. The reason why we couldn't be in George Howard tonight is because the largest room in that building, the Columbia Ellicott City room, is being occupied for a planning board meeting. But going forward, we're going to be holding all of our meetings in George Howard. We are going to be filming every meeting because to comply with the Open Meetings Act. And as well, these meetings are always open to the public. We're going to be establishing a website on the county government server, which should be up in the next few days, where we will be posting all of the documents that we review, the presentations we receive, the agendas that we work off of, as well as a copy of the executive order and actually the full viewing of the meetings that we are holding. So that's going to be publicized as well, and also all of the additional meeting dates that we eventually agree to will be publicized as well. I think the plan tonight is to, and I think our next step, which hopefully we can do this in a pretty seamless way, is to agree upon the next 5 meetings, so that way we will have all of our meetings scheduled through the remainder of the summer, ideally the end of August. Diane, we'll go through briefly with you what the topics of those subsequent meetings are, but the next step we want to do is actually get the schedule, get them down in your calendars, which is why I asked you each to bring your calendar this evening. I'm happy to answer other administrative questions that you have before we get into meeting dates and times. Sharon Lee?
I got invited to join a group on Facebook called HOCO APFO. Is that the county's?
No, you know, that is very interesting. Today, we found a YouTube page called HOCO APFO with all of these HOCO APFO videos.
Yes.
We didn't create them or
I
produce them.
somebody put some money into
Someone, we were actually just watching them about an hour or two, and they're kind of peculiar videos. I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of them, but someone has created a HOCO APFO YouTube page and Facebook page with all of these pretty alluring videos and posts. And so, no, that is not a county established page. If maybe a concerned citizen, someone anonymous, we do not know.
There's no indication of who it is.
No, and so.
What was interesting though was, I mean, I received the same Facebook invite about a week or two ago, which I didn't accept. But it was, I received it before any of this went public, and the committee was there, so I thought it was somebody associated.
Right, now, technically, the executive order wasn't signed until the beginning of this week, but, you know, some of you are council appointments. I mean, these weren't totally secretive. I mean, who was going to be on? I mean, I'm sure word got around to the community who was going to be on. I mean, a lot of you were invited by phone about a month or two ago, so through word of mouth, perhaps some people in the community had heard who the members were. We did not put out anything official until the executive order was signed. So the source of that, you know, the source of, you know, that creator is unclear, and I don't know if it's worth digging into further or if we should just let the public do what the public wants to do. But it was very interesting, and it's interesting to hear that you all got these invitations as well.
Well, they put some money into it.
You may
That's clear.
Yeah, you may want to at least let the public know that it's not the county.
Yeah.
On the website.
Yeah, so when we go into the office tomorrow, we'll talk with our communications office and sort out how we want to how we want to handle that. Maybe we'll try to reach out to the administrator or the publisher. Maybe they want to remain anonymous, I don't know. Maybe there's so many here, we'll never know. Yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We noticed it today too. Any other administrative questions before we begin, before Diane begins?
Yeah, this is probably the hardest task we actually have tonight, is trying to come up with a meeting dates. Recognizing also that over the summer, folks are gonna be traveling. We would love for everyone to be at every meeting. Probably not a reality, but we also expect that you're gonna try as hard as you can to come. If you're, off in Italy drinking wine or something, obviously, that's the reason.
We'll
not
do it
to
by
be
face,
there.
we'll go on Skype.
That's right, we can say.
We'll have that meeting in Italy then.
I was gonna say,
Whatever.
Tax not paid.
One thing we've gone back and forth on is, should we have a standard day that we meet? And the only issue with that is if other people have conflicts on that standard day. If we pick Wednesdays, and people have other things that they normally do, so we could rotate days periodically. It could be a Tuesday. I think we're going to avoid weekends. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday kind of things, try to do those. Is this a good time for you all? Do you prefer?
I'd rather do it at 7
7?
rather than 7:30. Because then it can end earlier.
That's not hard to change, but this time frame as opposed to like 5 o'clock or something.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so 7 p.m.?
But 7 works, the only concern was
7.
if somebody works in DC and it's hard to get back, that's not an issue for anybody?
And I would prefer Wednesday because I have other meetings in the week.
Transportation issue. I have a standing Wednesday meeting, but that'll go away at the end of the summer, but I can miss those two. So, I'm sure everybody's gonna have something somewhere. We were trying to do them twice a month through the summer. Avoid the July 4th area, maybe the week before and the week after. That's probably not a good time, and a lot of folks go away. July 4th, it does happen to be an actual Saturday this year, which is kind of interesting. So today is the 4th of June. I was looking at the 16th or 17th. That's a Tuesday or a Wednesday in 2 weeks from now.
Is it 16th or 17th?
Is 6 to 17 better? Is Wednesday better then?
I prefer Wednesday, but I could do that particular Tuesday.
Does anybody else, is there an overwhelming preference for one versus the other? Tuesday, all hands who can make Tuesday? Oh, so we got some that can't. How about Wednesday? Looks like we're seeing more hands on Wednesday. Does that conflict with you, Reg?
Just that particular Wednesday. Other than that, Wednesdays are good.
How do you want to decide these?
95%? Are you okay?
Make it 75%, because there's gonna be people who can't make it, at least one of them.
Okay, so you want to,
Do you want to go with the Wednesday then? Let's do that again, let's count. How many for Tuesday?
Do you want us just to?
We're not voting, we're just saying when we're available.
Just how many are available, right. How many can do the Tuesday, June 16th meeting? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, 11 plus me is 12. And how many can do Wednesday? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Joel can't make it, or you can't? 12,
Yeah, Joel
13,
can make it.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we got 18 versus 12, so let's go for Wednesday on that time, sorry. Different times.
So that's
June
Wednesday the
7th
17th.
Wednesday, June 17th. 7 p.m. And it will be at the George Howard Building in, which room?
Yeah.
You'll hear, a larger room.
Columbia room, Carl?
Columbia Ellicott City
So,
Room, yes.
Wednesday, June 17th, 7 p.m.
Got it.
Okay, then the next would be 2 weeks from then is the last week of June.
July 1?
We could do, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Probably want to avoid getting into the weekend.
Wednesday's fine.
Yeah, Wednesday's fine.
Wednesday is what, July 1st?
Mhm.
Wednesday, July 1st?
Mhm.
Is there, who cannot make that? Like you can? 1, 2, oh, you people gone a whole week before?
Week before, we get.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I won't be able to attend any meeting in July physically.
Okay.
So don't do it around me.
That actually brings up a good point. Will there be an ability to phone in or teleconference?
I
think if we're in a.
Carl, you're up.
Will there be an ability to phone in or teleconference?
Sure, we can arrange for
At the
that.
other building,
We can arrange for that, yes.
Yeah. So if, we hate to have you,
What day are you picking?
well, we're going between the first was what was suggested, is the 30th increase, anybody who couldn't come the first, can you come the 30th, and then, you've got 1, 2, 3 more, but then some people can't come.
I could call in.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4 more.
Is that just a bad week? Because
Yeah, the last week in June, the first week in July.
Could you push it to the 8th?
The 8th of July? Well, we're trying to get 2 in,
we already had 2.
oh yeah, we do have 2 in June, you're right. I'm not here the 8th.
I won't be here.
I will figure it out.
Okay.
Go back to the first.
And then I was looking at also that following week, the week of the 13th, hopefully we get people back for that. So how about, we do July 1st?
Yes.
Wednesday, July 1st, 7 PM. And then looking at the week of the 13th. I'm good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I'm out all week.
You're gone the whole week, okay. Does anybody else other than Chair Lee have a conflict with one of those nights?
About the 14th.
The 14th is Tuesday, oops,
I can't do the 14th.
can't do 14th? And he can't do the 16th, is what, Thursday?
I've got Wednesday the 15th.
Wednesday the 15th? So we're doing Wednesdays by default.
I can't make
You can't- Who cannot make Wednesday the 15th?
I'm gone until the 24th.
Oh, well, lucky you, where are you going?
Wife and daughter going to Korea and Hong Kong.
Neat. Okay, so we'll go with the 15th then, if we're doing Wednesday by default. Wednesday, July 15th, 7 PM. Wednesday, July 1st.
7/1, same time, same o'clock.
7/1,
Yeah.
7, yeah.
And 7:15.
Now, just looking at August.
The 29th?
Yeah, we've got, 2 weeks from then would actually still be in July. Do we want to do it in July?
You might, because why don't you, a lot of people travel in August.
Mm-hmm. I'll be gone a lot in August. Leaving on the 7th. But, do we want to do the 29th? Does that work? July, Wednesday, July 29th?
And it's really one for August.
Right, that's an early August meeting.
Yeah.
Exactly, I can't do August 5th, I'm hosting a full Boy Scout troop at my house.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Sure we don't want to do it?
Patrick's last meeting as a scout, he ages out, he turns 18 the next day.
Oh.
Never mind.
So we're hosting them at our house in our pool. And then actually, I'm gone for most of August. until
Just
that.
know I can't make it
The
the 29th.
29th of July,
I
okay.
didn't hear a lot of people say they can't make it, but.
Is there a lot of others who cannot make the 29th?
I can't make it the 29th.
That's not too bad.
And I'll be out of the country, so I probably won't call.
Okay, or you'd be calling us in the middle of the night or something.
Well, it's still amazing.
29th?
Huh?
Yeah.
Jeff, you said you couldn't make it,
Yeah.
we're doing roads.
Yeah, we're doing
roads.
roads that
So that's the one that Chad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, we should, I said we should have gone over with the
But if
12th.
we can't miss it, they're gonna be, we can always go online and watch it afterwards, so I mean,
Yes.
even though, okay.
Well, Jeff's just presenting a lot, so that particular time he's not.
Only
the first two, but the 29th.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think that might be Joel.
Joel,
Joel is the 3rd.
Well, that would be our
So
fifth
Joel's
meeting.
got to be 7:15,
No, that's right, you're right.
and Chad's 7:29.
yeah. And then the last, so we scheduled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last, and I didn't go through the, I'm sorry, what the topics were going to be.
Oh, I'll go, you want me to run through that with everyone?
Yeah, just so we've done the 5. Tell us what they are.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the.
I've only seen.
We didn't do the 6th one
It's a
yet.
day count, does tonight count?
With tonight,
Okay,
yes.
fine.
Yeah, we're starting tonight, yeah.
So you want to do the final date, or do you want?
Yeah, the final meeting is actually going to be a little less formal and probably more important that people are here. That we're going to start the discussion about what are the areas we want to look into, what are maybe some proposals people have already thought of, things like that. We're going to start to get into that and how we're going to proceed from that point forward, because the meetings in the fall will be more of us contributing and making recommendations and analyzing, and then finally coming up with what our recommendations are going to be. So the education process is pretty much over the summer, and then the deliberations will happen in the fall. So we're looking at that last, the only time I'm available actually in August is that last week, the week of the 24th.
How about the 26th, which is Wednesday?
Yeah, that works for me. Does that work for people? That actually gives you a few weeks, really, to digest what you've had, to go back and look at the presentations again if you want, to think about it yourself. And so Wednesday, August 26th, perfect. Now, you can't make a couple of those, though, right? Or were these dates?
Well, that was, I can make that.
Okay. Yes, that would be good. And confirm the dates again, so everybody gets them on their calendar.
So Carl, will you send out information once you have the teleconference information?
Yes, yes. And so just to recap the dates that Diane and you all decided on. So tonight is our kickoff meeting, and really there's just one more item on the agenda. We're going to have Joe Rutter, who's the former director of the Department of Planning and Zoning, present to you a history of APFO, since he served on both APFO committees and also headed up the Department of Planning and Zoning for, I don't know how long? 12 years. So he'll give you a background on APFO, you know, kind of lessons learned, topics that you should be mindful of. So hopefully that'll give you some good perspective on the history of APFO. Then our next meeting, which it looks like is going to be June 17th, that's going to be where we get into a lot of the technical background and briefing material for you. So that first meeting on June 17th is going to be a presentation by Jeff Brano, Research Director, Department of Planning and Zoning, where he's going to be giving you an overview of Howard County's land use policy, population trends, past, present, and future. And he's also going to be covering household projection methodology, how the Department of Housing, how the Department of Planning and Zoning projects growth and household allocation numbers. So that's going to be the meeting on June 17th. Then the meeting on July 1st is where you will start to learn about the first current APFO test, and that is the allocations test. Is that right, Jeff? And in that meeting, you're going to be learning about the open-closed chart-making process, the mechanics that go into putting your...
That's really going to be, Joel, the second meeting will be the APFO allocations.
APFO allocations.
Okay. Plus the open-closed chart in terms of what it is, how it works from the county's perspective of how it's administered and the impact it has had on development since the beginning of APFO, to kind of understand the mechanics of how that chart works. Yeah.
And then the third meeting on July 15th will be Joel's meeting Joel's presentation from the school system, where he that's where we're really going to be learning about the open-closed chart. Is that right, Joel? How student projections are made, how new school construction and redistricting has worked, the processes, how they have worked in the past, and kind of where growth is coming from, you know, new construction versus resale, and how that impacts the numbers in the open-closed chart. Is that?
I think our law and the state, the antecedents to our law call for a relationship between the school system's capital planning and the governance of the APFO law. So I'll try to help everyone understand how it kind of starts with the enrollment projection, you look at the capital budget, and how it ends up with an APFO chart, open and closed chart.
Okay, so Jeff does the allocations chart, Joel does the allocations test, Joel does the schools test, and then in our meeting on July 29th is Chad from the Department of Planning and Zoning, who's going to walk through the roads test with you. If you want to elaborate on the roads test in a minute, feel free to do so. That's the test I'm not that familiar with myself, so.
Yeah, we use a certain process called critical lane volume. It's actually a test where they go out and count cars at intersections within a certain location or a distance from the proposed subdivision or development. And the intersections have to pass a certain level of service. I'll keep it in.
No, that's fine for now. And then at that meeting in August. And then so that's really going to be all the education we do for you. In terms of learning about the ordinance and the tests that are a part of the ordinance. And so that meeting on August 26th is really going to be a recap for all of you to ask questions that you still had from all of those earlier presentations. And also, as important, letting us know what other briefings you'd like to receive about other public facilities, infrastructure needs that the county might have. I know that some of you around the table have mentioned certain industries and sectors that you're concerned with, be it public safety, healthcare. That's going to be the opportunity for you to ask us, based on all of that learning that you've done in the 4 previous meetings, what briefings you'd still like to receive so that we can coordinate those either with other county agencies or other outside county entities that we could have come in and present to you in some form or fashion. We didn't want to stipulate what those were right now. We wanted you to get the full background and briefing on APFO before we pigeonhole how the types of briefings we want to conclude with before we get into deliberation and debate on the recommendations. Okay? So that's going to be the purpose of August 26th.
The people who wrote presentations from June 17th through the 29th, will they be here pretty much the entire time?
Yes, so
Questions
Jeff...
come up after that date of the 26th, we can still ask them.
Yeah, so Jeff and Joel are serving on the committee with you. They're non-voting members on the committee. The only presentation that's being given by a non-committee member is Chad, and you're here tonight, so you're welcome to come to every one if you want to. Yes, he's Department of Planning and Zoning, as is Jeff, and Joel is the school system.
Before we go to Joe, we had talked about some of the ground rules and all, and I'm just wondering about one other. These meetings are all open to the public, but are there any standards of conduct in terms of how we communicate what we discuss? And I mean, like this HOCO, APFO, if any of us were involved, is that okay, or should we be restricted from doing that sort of thing?
I mean, I don't see, what I plan to do after our first meeting, when we kind of go back to the office and, assess how this evening went, we want to sit down with the Office of Law and just kind of go through the process with them so we know that we are abiding by every legal condition that the county has to abide by in terms of open meetings and communication. So when we do that, we'll bring up this issue of this website to them.
But I'm thinking of that just sort of as an example. Are there expectations we should have of the members that maybe go beyond what the legal technicality?
In terms of like restrictions that are, or standards of conduct that we should all...
Like you're asking, there's some degree of confidentiality.
Well, it's open, so it's not really confidential, but it's more like, how we go and lobby our constituents, or how we represent a group if we're representing a group, or those sorts of things.
Yeah, one thing, because I've given some thought to this, the expectations, and they said is, or that you attend as much as you can. Obviously, if you're not here, pay attention, contribute. If you have something, something, make sure to contribute that so the rest of the group can consider it, and that we all respect each other's opinions, because we're going to get to points where people are not going to agree with each other, and we just need to do that civilly. The only other thing I was thinking about is, I think we really need to do the business of the committee in the committee. And I'm saying that doesn't mean you can't go off and have lunch with somebody to talk over a point, but if we start having subgroups that are getting together and meeting and strategizing and things, I think that could be very detrimental to what we're trying to do here. So I would ask that people not do that. Doesn't mean you can't talk to each other, obviously, but if you have something substantive that you want to bring up, that you want to get support for, whatever, let's do it as a group, and hopefully we can respect each other enough to allow people to say what they have to say, and then put that on the table and be open-minded. And as Alan said, there are no preconceived notions going into this. I have a perspective from the school system, but I don't know a lot of the other things, and I haven't heard some of the other things, so I'm open-minded, and I don't have anything in mind that I'm going to say we've got to change this, that, or the other thing. I think we all agree we need to look at it, because it's an older piece of legislation. The county has changed dramatically over the 20-some years, 30 years that it's been in effect, and the growth has moved, and that's what we're going to learn from these things. So is there anything else?
I would say, and I would say most of our communications, given the sheer size of our group, is probably going to be over email. and it's perfectly fine to ask questions, you know, and to have dialogue. I'm gonna find out from the Office of Law to what extent we should make the questions that are raised in emails public, to what extent we should make certain conversations that we have public. I'm gonna try to figure out what the appropriate standard of conduct is for email communications, since that will hopefully be primarily the way we communicate with each other. And then just another important element that we're not going to decide that tonight, but that we're going to have to eventually decide is set up a rules and procedures around voting, how we want voting to occur, what's a quorum, you know, what constitutes a majority. So those are still, that's still an important element of this committee that we have to work through, and it's definitely going to be discussed here. We're just not going to do it yet, and we have some time, given that the first few meetings are really just briefings. So
For those of us that are kind of associated with community associations, is it okay to tell them we're on the committee?
Oh, sure, if
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
public,
Suggestions
and
and
they're welcome to
bring them
come
in.
too.
That's what I was-
I guess I'm wondering if we shouldn't poll everybody just to be sure that nobody's involved with this APFO website or whatever, because I don't think that's fair if they are, if we're feeding people stuff. I think we ought to be themselves and not start playing politics on email or whatever, Facebook or whatever.
I'd like to bring up, Stu and I have just come up with a very contentious committee for the mulching. And in that particular case, there were meetings with the executive. They've done videos for both sides, and organizations formed, and panel groups formed, and communications formed. And I haven't seen any particular Office of Law feedback from that particular event. There may be new guidance going forward for this group, but based
We were
on.
not able to hear that.
If you could restate Andrew's answer.
Well, how many of you are familiar with the mulching task force that's running? So, you know, there's obviously a very large group that's proponent on one side, there's a very large group that's proponent on others. There have been many community meetings, email groups, it's, how can I put it? Contentious, and I'm not expecting that there. But I'm just saying, coming right off of that, our guidance when we came off that committee was pretty much it was free for all. And we didn't have any particular guidance on, you know, whether people could work for or against or proposing rules or in our particular case, there were 2 sets of reports coming in.
I think you raise a really, I mean, what I will do is when I'll have my meeting with the Office of Law before our next meeting, and maybe if it's helpful, and if you think it's warranted, I could even invite an attorney from the Office of Law to come in and maybe give a 5 or 10 minute background on what are appropriate expectations of task force members. If you think that that's a good idea, I mean, maybe just kind of give me a show of hands so everyone feels more comfortable going forward, and I can definitely have someone come in and do that. If you think that that's
I would say see what they say.
Yeah,
and then
if
how-
they think it's
How does that
warranted.
vary from what we're talking about here?
Mhm.
And if it's,
And when I introduced the subject, it wasn't just what the Office of Law would say, it was so we all have of similar expectations of each other's behavior that may have nothing to do with what the Office of Law would say, just so we all kind of work under the same ground rules.
and we are a large group, so once we start getting into discussions, I think we'll have to get a little more formal about it, and I'll have to recognize people to speak, so we're not jumping all over each other, and people can complete their thoughts. At this point, it's probably, things you're gonna be saying are probably questions rather than opinions or comment. But if anybody has suggestions as well, because this is, we've got 23, 24 people here. So,
I have a couple quick ones that I could do offline or whatever, but just from doing the redistricting.
yes, good point.
Things have changed a lot over the years as far as social media and, you know, you think it makes a lot of sense to share email communication and be upfront about anything that we talk about. I had someone that had her work email in there, and it was some fabric salesman from Taiwan that just wouldn't leave her alone after we figured out she worked for Under Armour. And then she called me and she was furious. What could I do? I'm just the planner that led a committee, and her email address ended up on there. And so we want to probably have someone who's familiar with how people scrape data out of public websites, take a look at this. And then the other thing, I just say if we can make some kind of commitment that we're working together as a team. I've had situations where people are kind of taking guidance by text messages from somebody else in the audience or whatever. That could be a little awkward because it's like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the person that's on your committee or are you talking to someone else? So I figure we're all here for the county. So, but I have a few other tips that we can use to the school system.
That's a good point, the cell phones, but maybe we can agree that we're gonna, turn it upside down. We need it, the reality is people need it for calendar purposes, so we can't say no cell phones. It's certainly silent, offline, and not be communicating with somebody else during a meeting. If we can all agree to that, and if we're in a meeting. Anything else? And Joe, do you want to take questions during your presentation or hold them till the end?
I talked to Carl, and his instructions were, I can stand. The instructions were, you got 15, maybe 20 minutes max. Give me a 24-year history of the Adequate Public Facilities. So bear with me. I started making just general bullet notes that I usually speak from, and then I tend to go way over. So I'm going to more look like I'm reading this than just speaking off the cuff.
We have gone, and when you're over your time.
Yeah, with Sandy here, I know I'll get hit in the side of the head with something.
Do you want them to interrupt you if there's
No, because I'll never get through.
Okay, so don't interrupt.
We'll be here sometime tonight. I'm happy to stay, when I finish, I'll go through things, but, the first thing, I already said, I was the planning director when the first Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance was drafted. Just from your discussions earlier, Nicole was on the second committee. That initial committee was, the term was Adequate Public Facilities, but the task was a growth management system. It's much larger than the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. That's one piece of the package, and I'll talk about that a little bit tonight, but I think it's critical that you understand that an APF ordinance by itself will fail, will not be legally sufficient, will create suits, and accomplish not much of anything unless it's part of the overall policy and implements whatever policy you set out in the general plan. First thing I want to do, although Alan has left, is thank him for putting this committee together. In my opinion, it is way long overdue. Each time these committees were established, it was part of implementing a general plan, either prior to introduction of the general plan or immediately after the general plan, in the case of the first one. The initial effort was prompted in 1990 by capacity problems that existed from rapid growth in the 1980s. We were growing at over 4,000 units a year. Jeff will tell you now we're about 1,000 units a year. Chuck Ecker, right after he was elected, formulated a committee, and we were about a dozen. So you guys have a big group to work with. But he told us to look at all facets of growth management, and he did this and appointed the committee in December of 1990. The committee was chaired by Jim Ecker. Sounds the same, different spelling, no relation. Jim Ecker was the chair of the Howard County Citizens Association at the time, and he did a good job of both chairing it and representing the committee. I don't want to scare you, but I put this quote in, and after your discussion about your meetings here, as we completed our initial draft of the work, starting in December of 1990 in our first meetings, completing in November 25th, 1991, here's a quote. Since then, which was December 20, 1990, the committee has met weekly, originally for 4 hours, and for the past 6 months for 6 hours per week. Some of the things that we decided was anything that came out of the committee was going to come by consensus. We had Rosemary Mortimer in Benton, Rosemary being chair of the PTA Council, and Al Scavo any of you that know the old history, Mortimer versus HRD was one of the first classic land use cases in Columbia. They stood at the podium together in 1992 in front of the council, and stood there together and said, adopt what we put forward or reject it. Do not amend it. That was probably the most impressive to the council. To, we better not screw with this thing because nobody liked it. And nobody's going to like what you guys come out with either. But as long as everybody hates it somewhat, you're probably right about where you're supposed to be. If anybody's totally pleased with what you come up with, that's probably not a good thing. Jim Roby put together the second committee, which was chaired by Dave Burson early in his first term, and the reason he put the committee together was it had been 8 years that it had been in effect, but we were getting ready to do the 2000 general plan, so we wanted to look at what was happening in the Adequate Public Facilities and review the policies and see if anything needed to be updated. That committee had its first meeting on May 6th of 1999. It concluded its work by the end of September. So the schedule that Alan put in the executive order is pretty consistent, and I think we met every week instead of twice a month, but hopefully you all can get the benefit of Jeff and Joel and all, and do it a little quicker than what we did the second time. Cole was on that committee too, so he can add some of the history. Unfortunately, this is my opinion now, no similar effort was undertaken for General Plan 2030. That was adopted in February of 2013. So without the benefit of a complete understanding of the growth management process, many significant changes were made to the APF process, assumptions, and goals. Your task, I believe, is to gain an understanding of what a comprehensive growth management strategy is and how an APF ordinance can help to implement policies that assure that the physical infrastructure keeps pace with demands related to development. As you get into the study, you'll find that there were many different approaches to growth management. As noted in the executive order, Maryland Department of Planning maintains a database with all kinds of models for APFOs and different growth management techniques. My task tonight is to review how we got to where we are today in about 20 minutes. So I'm not going to provide a lot of detail, but you have the resources here. I'm perfectly happy to answer questions or come back later, or whatever you need. So as I said before, as the 1990 general plan was being drafted, the pace of growth going back in the late 80s and the inability to control the direct growth was kind of in the forefront of the plan. A comprehensive, and Jeff can tell you all the details of this, marginal cost fiscal impact analysis was conducted to underpin the plan. And it measured all the major facilities in the county, the roads, schools, parks, water, sewer, fire, police, and some others. Without all the detail, here's the key findings from the results of that fiscal impact study. We looked at the full range of facilities provided by the county. We decided that the pace of residential growth is controlled and directed, and the pace of employment growth meets the targets. So we get enough jobs and we control the number of residential, that the capital improvement program, if properly structured and implemented, could fund and address the facility needs. The key was the capital improvement program had to be real. You can't put a school 5 years out in the program and every year just push it back a year and expect that to work. You can't do that with the roads or a fire station or anything else. You have to have a real capital improvement program. We even added to the capital program what was called 7 to 10 years to get things way out there in the future. It was kind of looking as far forward as the general plan to know that there were additional things that happened. 2 facilities were the largest, most cost expensive and difficult to manage, and that was roads and schools. So the decision was to make sure that a capital improvement program was developed to address everything like police stations, fire stations, libraries, parks, and to, in addition to the capital improvement program, have specific tests for roads and schools. So for roads, one of the facts is the county rarely builds roads. They widen some intersection, build a new road. They'll widen an intersection or make some other capacity improvement with signals or something like that. But the key responsibility of the county in the late 80s, we just didn't keep pace. And that's just kind of the way it was. We did not do the improvements, and we got way behind in both roads and schools. But the key needs that were identified in both the general plan and in the APFO study were highways like Route 29 and 175. We forget those roads all had traffic lights. There weren't interchanges at Snowden River or 175. Well, 175 had 132 broken land. A lot of those were still at great intersections. So state funding for those roads, it just wasn't happening. It was way behind. So the county was contributing money to the state, but not enough to spur the state to build all of these state highways. So as a result of the committee work and evaluation of funding methods like impact fees, that was the first thing we looked at, there was a decision that they're really not appropriate in Howard County. Part of the reason that we were shying away from them when we were doing the 1991-92 study was Montgomery County was getting killed. Their impact fee had been found to be illegal, and they had to go through all kinds of stuff. Then in 99, when we were doing the second committee, Anne Arundel County had gotten nailed for both their roads and their schools by spending money outside of your impact area. Howard County is so small, collecting some money in Elkridge and then spending it in North Laurel, if it's impact fees, you can't do that, or you'll lose. For other things, it can work. The other problem we had is about 50% of the labor force in Howard County leaves each day for jobs outside of the county. That's the traffic that's leaving here. And about half the jobs in the county were filled by residents from other counties. Impact fees need to meet this nexus test, and as you get into, I'm sure you're going to discuss impact fees, somebody will get an attorney in here to explain the nexus test and what happens if you don't meet it. At the time, I always said that. The committee recommended, and remember this initial committee made a decision that everything would be done unanimous. There would be no minority reports, there would be no majority reports, there would be no voting unless we reached consensus, and it was all, everybody walked out of the room saying the same thing. We recommended an excise tax as an alternative to funding method for the roads, which is similar to an impact fee, but it's a tax, so it doesn't have to meet the nexus test. But you need state legislation to authorize you to collect those taxes. We went to the state legislature, and again, you had the building community, the Alscavos, and the residents, and citizens associations, and PTA council standing in front of the legislature saying, we want authority to tax ourselves. Very unusual, it happened, that's how I got in. The goal of the road excise tax was to provide a fund to supplement, but not supplant, the money that the county was putting in. In the early 90s, we were putting in about $17 million a year for capacity improvements, a lot of it for state roads that we would leverage against the state money. The impact analysis said we needed about $34 million a year in order to do this. So the calculation of the impact fee to begin with was to generate $17 million a year in these excise taxes to go to roads. And the state legislation, as it's adopted, the authority to charge these says you can fund up to 50% of a capacity improvement with the excise tax. The other 50% has to come from local money. So we ended up generating the $34 million a year, even in those early years, from that tax, and that's why you see all these interchanges on roads. And we were also given the authority to look forward, sell bonds that were paid off by the excise tax in order to get the improvements in earlier. Schools, we had the transfer tax as a revenue, so there's 0.25% of the transfer tax every time a house is sold or a new house is built. There's a tax on that, and that's set aside for school construction and land acquisition associated with schools. The problem in Howard County is, well, all of the counties, the state was supposed to fund building the schools, and then the counties operate the schools. Well, Howard County's always had a much lower, higher standard, a lower class size than what the state rated capacity and county rated capacity and how we count things. So we were having a lot of problems. We weren't getting much state money. So what we decided was that for schools, you'd think the logical solution would be just increase funding and stop growth until the facilities are adequate. Well, as you do the studies, you'll find out it's that new growth that's paying the fees and raising all the boats. So you really can't do that. So the transfer tax and these other one-time fees charged in new construction need to be kept in mind and what they contribute to expanding the infrastructure. In addition, and I think this is important, and hopefully Joel will remember and agree, in addition to the money and building schools, Dr. Mo Kalin, who was the associate superintendent, known as Dr. Death for his redistricting plans, he was a committee member, attended every meeting. He explained just building new schools is not an answer. It's not going to work, because without the predictability of where growth is going to occur, he doesn't know where to build them until after the growth's already passed and then you're over capacity. And the rest of the committee, including the PTA folks, were saying, well, wait a minute, we don't just want to be building all these schools, because every year we're going to have massive redistricting. Every time you build a new school, you have to redistrict. We need to have some predictability here so that we don't just keep moving kids every year. And that's what prompted the open and close chart and was fed by the allocations. Going back to the fiscal studies quickly, we spent time to understand the details of how the assumptions were structured. And it's important to understand that these fiscal impact analyses are not political documents. They're not politically correct in any way. They are just facts. If this is your goal to have 120% of capacity, 115%, 95%, whatever you want to pick, this is what it's going to cost. So be prepared to balance these two in what you think is what you want to say you want to do and what it's going to cost. And growth can pay part of it, but somebody's going to have to pay the rest of it, or it just won't happen. It was the intent here to set a goal and set a financing program that could meet that goal. Joel's going to do a better job than I am talking about the class sizes and how the schools are constructed and what we've done in the earlier years. Most of our elementary schools have middle school gyms and middle school cafeterias and core facilities. So even though the school may be built for 500, you can really seat 600 in as they go through, not at one time, as they go through the cafeteria and gym. So there was some flexibility felt at the time that you could go a little bit over capacity with temporary use of relocatables or whatever it took to not overcrowd the schools, even though they were technically over capacity. But for the fiscal analysis, the study divided the county into a series of planning areas. These were artificial geographic areas that had similar demographic and income characteristics. And then growth was distributed among those planning areas. Like in the West, it wasn't a priority of the county to have development in the West, but the West had the highest income, highest value houses, and when you look at the fiscal analysis of what everybody paid versus what they cost, they were profitable. So 10% of the growth went to the West. When you get to the eastern part of the county, Ellicott City was next, and then Columbia, Elkridge and Southeast. But for the most part, the average house doesn't really pay its own way. We needed the new jobs, and the jobs that we were talking about were research and development, manufacturing, office, and particularly the increased federal employment. Retail, restaurants, those jobs, yeah, they're jobs and they go in the number, but they don't add a whole lot to the tax base. The employees don't pay high salaries. Many can't live in the county because they can't afford it, so it's just adding to the commuting. So it's important to understand when you talk about job growth, it's not just any kind of jobs, it's got to be the higher end jobs that you target. We did scenarios ranging from 1,500 to 4,000 jobs and 1,500 to 4,000 residences and compared it all. And settled in on the 2,500 new jobs and 2,500 new houses. This is in 1990. That's where it balanced out. The allocation system was developed to provide predictability to the development community, but as I said before, this is what Mo wanted for predictability for the schools. If you tell me that this Elkridge area is going to have X number of units over the next 10 years, I can figure out whether we're going to need new schools there. If you tell me now, well, we're going to kind of put the whole eastern part of the county together in one big pot, except these special growth areas, and then every year we're going to throw it all back in the pot and remix it and reallocate it, and no idea where to build schools. So I think that needs to be re-looked at. It was just changed here in the last couple of years with the new general plan, but it's taken much of the predictability out of the system. Planning allocation test in areas serving elementary and middle school. We're also had a cap on what could go into any elementary school in a year. It's 300 a year, so that you don't get one project come in and totally overload the project. APFO years are always 3 years different than calendar years, which confuses everyone. But the idea was, if I'm processing a plan now and I'm getting my initial approval, it really doesn't matter whether the schools are adequate today or not. I want to know whether they're adequate 3 years from now when the kids are going to hit the school. And that's why the APFO test, and I'm sure you understand that from the board time. So I think today, the first question is the pace of growth still too fast? In 1990, we had an assumption that Columbia Town Center was going to be a focus of redevelopment. It was a big part of the 1990 general plan. It's a great idea, it's just 25 years ahead of its time. Columbia, over the years, rarely used its allocations, and other areas were sitting, waiting in line. The initial standard of 120% of capacity was all based on what Mo was telling the committee could be accommodated. When the second group came in and met, that was reduced to 115%. You have to keep in mind, too, things that have changed over 24 years. We didn't have pre-K, you didn't have all-day kindergarten. Just going from half-day kindergarten to all-day kindergarten cut your capacity by 50%. So things had to evolve. Oh, and then finally, I guess in 2004, separate fee was the same sort of legislation from the state to enable us to collect a fee for schools per square foot of new residential development. So they pay a fee, a building permit, in addition to the road excise tax and all the permit fees, and often MIHU fees and other fees that they do. So in conclusion, you'll hear a lot about the open and closed chart and the allocation chart, and they get all the attention, but they're just one little piece of the growth management. The charts are important. The road test that Chad's going to talk about, the development monitoring report, which Jeff produces, is critical because the council's supposed to look at that every year the executive's supposed to look at it as he's developing his capital improvement program to make sure that it's nice that this is your goal, but if the facts are what's coming through the pipeline is completely different, that's the warning mechanism and was required by the plans to be created and issued every year. And you need to understand the state excise taxes for schools and roads and how they differ from impact fees and what can be done with it. So if that's done in context with the greater goals of the general plan, I think you'll be good to go. And with that, let's open it to questions, or do you want to quit for tonight, or?
No, questions.
Okay.
When you talked about the transfer tax for school construction and land acquisition, are you actually looking only at the actual school building, or are you looking at all buildings needed to sustain a school system?
The transfer tax is for school construction and land acquisition. Are you talking about if they wanted to build a warehouse, would they be able to use that money?
Like, I know at one time, the school system was sharing a Send One as, to house some of their departments, for professional development space, things of that sort. So I'm looking at, is it directly just for schools, or is it for the school system to allocate however they need to meet the needs of the growing school system?
So the capital budget in general.
Okay.
That's what I'm paraphrasing for you, is that what you mean?
Yes.
If the overall capital budget would include facilities that are not used to teach children.
Yes.
So I don't, Joe?
I think it is not just used for school buildings, but it is used for the school capital budget. It also, I believe, is a fairly small fraction of the fund. Most of the money towards constructing schools comes from bonding, where the county borrows money to fund the schools. And then the next most important source of funding for building schools is state funding, which is also bonding. It's the state going out and taking the bond and allocate that to the different jurisdictions, depending on different criteria. Joe alluded to some of them, quite a few actually.
Do we get much from the federal side?
None for school construction that I'm aware of.
How different department is that?
There are for running some programs, like school lunch program.
They're not capital expenditures.
Yeah.
That's the other thing to keep in mind with this, you know, people say, well, we need more police officers. Well, if you start funding them with one-time fees that are gonna come with a building permit, you know, we get into the 2008 recessions, are you gonna lay off all these police officers, or, you know, what are you gonna do each year if it doesn't come? So it's only been used for capital funding, and as Joel said, if you have something like a transfer tax that's a predictable annual revenue, the bond rating agencies will allow you to go ahead and sell bonds on these things and pay them off over the years, knowing that you're going to have that growth coming in, and you'll have the revenue, and then the resales also pay the transfer tax on.
You were talking about the same thing with the excise tax for the roads, and you said that we had bonds, and we pay the bonds off with the excise tax.
Correct.
So I guess back then, they thought the excise tax could end at some point. So did they continue to float bond? Well, and the excise tax comes from growth, and at some point, there won't be growth, right? So wouldn't that mean that, you know, we can't keep floating bonds based on the excise tax forever?
Well, none of the general plans that I'm aware of has ever, we've always done these analyses. What about build out?
Right.
There is no such thing as build out. You'll go back and redevelop, and something that's developed now at a lower density will get redeveloped at a higher density, or things like you know, town center. Columbia should have been built out in 1985. That was the original plan. You know, that was the goal. Well, here we sit in 2015, and they just added 5,500 more units. So I would expect that.
Not yet.
Well,
soon.
they added them to the capacity. You didn't build it.
So we've still been floating bonds to pay for.
Yeah,
roads.
I think if you look at the capital budget, and I haven't looked at this year's capital budget to see how much is excise tax, and then there's an excise tax bonds that, again, for roads and schools. But look at the state legislation. It restricts that you can only fund 50% of a capacity improvement with the excise tax. The other half has to come from some other resources. So collecting a whole bunch of money, unless you're willing to match it or go back to the state legislature, isn't going to do you any good. You can't spend it.
Joe, what is your opinion as far as a major problem with APFO today, and how would you improve it?
Then we can be done.
I said,
Yeah, right,
I said
yeah,
major,
no,
eight major. But then we have major, and then minors.
You're right.
And this is my personal opinion, I'm out of it. I'm retired. I've been gone from Howard County for 12 years. I had to deal with Anne Arundel County for 4 years. You think you got it bad? You have no idea. I have a concern. I was not part of it. I was not involved in it. I may not understand it. I haven't been on a committee to get feedback, but I have a real concern about the Adequate Public Facilities allocations. I think the school chart has the same predictability it's always had. But how in the hell he does it, I have no idea. Because what we do in the east, is we have the entire eastern part of the county, the entire plant service area is one area. And then there's targeted growth areas. What do they call it, Jeff? The red areas.
Designated places, it's growth and revitalization.
Growth and revitalization. Those areas go together, and they have a pot of allocations. And at the end of the year, if these pots haven't been used, they throw them all back in together and redistribute parts of them. Not all of them, but parts of them. Well, how does he know where they're going to end up then? I mean, everything could end up going into Ellicott City year after year after year, just because that's where the demand is, and that may be a good thing if it's going in Ellicott City in single-family houses. It may be a very fiscally, not socially or morally, but fiscally concern if it's all condos and townhouses that, or along Route 1 that provide a real opportunity for housing for a lot of people. But let's understand that don't expect, when they generate all these kids, how long did it take you to fill up the elementary school there on Duckett's Lane?
We opened, we were off by 2 students per year.
Yeah, so
That's really full.
But that wasn't 115%, that was the regular capacity.
right, but the point is, some of this housing is going to generate a lot of pupils. When you start building housing in parts of Ellicott City or the West, and the house costs $800,000, $900,000. That's not starter homes where people are just getting ready to have their kids and going to start going through the system. But the housing that's along the corridor is much more affordable to young families starting out. And our job balance is not necessarily the same. They may be working in commercial, and that's why they're looking for housing at that value. Well, other than we would like to develop, I guess, 1 million square feet in town center, that's got to compete with the strip. You have 11 miles of strip commercial along Route 1. How's town center going to balance with that? So my answer is, if I had to pick the major thing, I'm concerned about the allocation system no longer having a geographic tie to a fiscal basis for how much growth is in each one of the areas. It isn't whether the people in Ellicott City to have more growth and the people in Elkridge don't want any growth, or vice versa. It's how much can you afford in each one of these areas. And we really haven't done the study since 1999 that I'm aware of on what the demographic income when I say demographics, I'm talking about fiscal demographics of the housing stock is and what's available. So,
May I ask a follow-up question? Do you feel that the 115% overcapacity has created a massive amount of trailers?
no. No.
What has created a massive amount of trailers at the schools?
I don't know that it's that's a judgment call and an opinion of whether it's a massive amount of trailers. Again, the system has decided,
300.
and Joel, again, I'll defer to him, but the school system has decided that on a temporary basis, that can be a better alternative than building new schools. I mean, we built all these schools out in the west, and they're sitting there at 50-60% of capacity, because then we shut down all the growth in the west. What are you thinking?
But,
You know?
but when you say the trailers, those trailers, when you put them in, you said temporary, they're not temporary. They are there, once they're there, they are there. And to move a trailer, correct me if I'm wrong, is around $150,000. It's pretty steep.
Yeah,
So it's not
I'm not arguing that whether or not trailers are a good thing or a bad thing. Going back 25 years, there were a lot of teachers that said, yeah, put me in the relocatable. The air conditioning always works. The principal never comes by to look and see what I'm doing. Not true. Not true. It's changed in 25 years.
You go buy a check, right?
Yes, sir.
So, it's been since roughly 1990. How many challenges has Howard County had legally against its APFO?
Zero. I'm not aware of any, right? Anything happened in the last 12 years? To challenge the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance.
One Board of Appeals hearing that happened just now, it's happening, it's in process right now.
Oh, but I'm talking, I thought you were talking about legal challenges.
That was no legal, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's been no legal challenges, like in Anne Arundel, they adopted an ordinance that said, no, you can't spend the money on relocatables. Well, they bought relocatables for years and years and years with their impact fees. And then they got challenged in court, they were losing, so they changed their code to say, well, it's okay to use them for relocatables. And the judge says, not at the time you collected them. So they're still fighting, they've been fighting for years whether to give the money back. Montgomery County spent money outside of the impact areas. And it's really almost impossible to identify an impact area, calculate how much you're going to charge. You live on this side of the street, you pay in that one, and I'm living on this side of the street and I pay in another one. Well, next year the bus route changes and my kid goes to that school when I paid in the wrong district.
Joe, if I could ask one clarification, I sense I'll get a lot of questions on the 15th, but the relocatable classrooms are not counted towards the capacity in the open and closed school chart. So all this planning that we're doing for dealing with growth does not take those into account. Charles County went ahead and counted them. I don't know if that was such a good idea. I think they're a good thing for a lot of reasons, but not to count.
Well, I should have made that point. If you look at the open and closed chart, you'll see some schools that are at 150 or 150%, 160% of capacity. Well, obviously, they don't have double classrooms, kids stacked too high. They are using the relocatables to meet that. But those schools then are closed to new development without counting any of the relocatables.
Joe, we keep using this term capacity. What is the state rated capacity? How many kids per classroom?
Still 25, Joel?
It depends on the level, because they have a scheduling factor built in for the middle and high schools as you get into multiple periods and that kind of thing. But for school system, we use 22 to 1 for kindergarten, 19 to 1 for the first and second grade, 25 to 1 for third through fifth. And then it's essentially 20 and a half at the middle school level because of the way the scheduling works. And it's essentially 23 to a classroom at the high school level.
Those are our numbers, right?
That's what we're using.
And that's what I was saying before.
It's not sort of dramatically different.
I mean, I'm trying to understand the difference between 115% of our number. How does that compare with the state considers capacity?
It's I couldn't do it just sitting here. I think, it's just there's little things like build count, the pre-K space has capacity. We don't, because K through 5 students are not pre-K. So there's a lot of different things back and forth. But
We also had as a lot of the inclusion programs were coming in, a classroom that is designated for 22 may have a dividing wall in it now, and it's got 2 classes of 11, but it counts as 0. Okay, still got the same 22 kids, but there are 2 special programs, and now you have 0 capacity in there. There's all these flukes in there, and if you spend hundreds and hundreds of hours, you can get into those details and come away and think, you know what, the school system and the Department of Education aren't as crazy as you think they are. They really do know what they're doing. And that's a compliment, Joel. It's really surprising that you see a number and you panic and you go, well, I don't want my kid in a school that's 20% over capacity. And then you find out that it's really not impacting the educational program, which to me, as a former PTA council president, I find, I don't care what you do with the numbers. If I have my grandkids in a school that they can't learn because the resources aren't there for them, I got a problem. If they're getting a great education, I don't care what the numbers are.
I have a question. Is part of the problem when we designed the county designed a plan where we were going to build more schools out in the west because we were doing our growth in the west. And then was it the state that came back and made us change the way we were doing the growth projection and where we had to put the growth? Was that part of one of the problems that we have? Is it the state is telling us that our planning can't work anymore because
the state said everybody had to do this tier legislation, and you had to adopt tiers, and in the tier in the tier 4 growth areas, you wouldn't allow to do subdivisions. In tier 3 you could. I think the county council came up with a good plan. Unfortunately, the administration at the time didn't. It said unfortunately again didn't. For whatever reason, the administration at the time did not accept that, and they just made the entire west in the tier 4 in the RC, and took away the ability to subdivide where they built brand new schools that are 10 Oaks and so forth that sit there without ever having students come in, and you're not going to bus kids from Ellicott City to Lisbon to try and fill them up.
Usually when I see the newspaper reports, and this goes back to way back when, when you see the definition of closed school.
In the newspaper.
99.99% of the people, including people around this table like that, think, okay, there's no development in my neighborhood because the school is closed. And rarely have I seen any annotations going, except for small developments, or open after 4 years, or any caveats that let buyer beware. No, closed is not a permanent condition. It's something else.
I think that great point. That's very important for the committee to understand. We spent a lot of time going through, the planning. And let me first say, if this committee can come up with something other than you're in a closed school, so everybody panics, they're closing my school. No. Somehow a stop development school or whatever. It looks out in the future, but the balance was have that predictability. You can't take somebody that's well along in the process and then something's happened that has nothing to do with the development because they haven't produced the houses and the kids yet. Causes the school to go over capacity. You can't stop that development too far out
I agree with the
after the
technical,
process.
but is there a better way we can communicate that to communities?
If you can,
The perception is definitely
there's
not in line.
absolutely, you're absolutely right. There must be a better way. I don't know what it is, but the open and closed test is probably the worst term that you could ever have.
And educating the media is a whole other thing too, because they're gonna just pick up on things by just spending 10 minutes at a board meeting where Joel's presenting for an hour, and it's not, they don't have the full grasp of it. I don't wanna go too much longer because it's after 9. But I do want to have Paul introduce himself. You missed all of that, so you can tell us who you are, what your profession is, or why you're here.
I'm Paul Ravel. I'm a local land developer. I serve on several nonprofit boards, most of them related to housing, affordable housing. I'm also very active with what used to be Home Builders Association, now the Maryland Building Industry Association. And I'm here because I think there is a fusion between both worlds.
And you back at Danes.
In my seat, yeah, thank you.
I want to thank Joe. Thank you very much. And I think some people can hang around. Do we need to rearrange the tables again?
No.
Oh, sure, sure.
For you or Carl, if we wanted to read some of the past votes, is there a way that the committee members can have access to be able to read those over?
There are the 2 prior APFO studies. They're short studies. They're only a few pages long. So what I can do is I can PDF them and scan them and send them to you. They're not going to be lengthy, so don't expect, a voluminous report, but I will send you what was done in the past.
The law itself is a good.
And so, that's what I was also going to say, so on your way out, I have folders for each of you, which has the APFO ordinance and the most recent open-close chart, so you can just familiarize yourself with how the chart looks, read through the ordinance.
Can you also send it to us as a PDF?
I can send it to you electronically as well.
I was going to recommend, there's the Maryland Department of Planning study of APFO laws that's fairly interesting.
I have that. I can email that link around to everyone as well.
Coming from the contentious other task force.
Right.
One of the things that was an issue with this was everyone's emailing PDFs and documents back and forth, and we suggested early in the task force put up a portal, which they did after the close. But for I don't know if we want to put up every single document everyone finds on the web to a portal which is viewable to the world, but to the other extreme, everyone PDFing documents left and right to each other isn't very organized.
Well, these we could put on the website, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could put
Anything
the
that comes
previous
from-
APFO reports on everything that you just mentioned is perfectly acceptable, I think, to put on the website, because it's all easily
public.
attainable publicly.
But it'll all be in one place.
But I get your point. I mean, I will try to minimize just how much I inundate you with material so that it doesn't get overwhelming and confusing. But so far, you haven't asked for anything that anyone else wouldn't be able to get within a snap of a finger if they just emailed someone.
And most of that's going to come early on, unless as we get into the fall, we think, oh, we want this report from some other county that did something. So most of that stuff will be happening now, so we can get that up on the website. Pardon?
We're close to 100 in the last one.
Documents? Oh, wow.
Well, and, Jeff and Joel and Chad, they're gonna do PowerPoint presentations. So we're gonna upload those PowerPoint presentations.
The report that Joe mentioned is really helpful when you want to look at what all the counties are doing and then
Sure.
compare ourselves.
And I think in the executive order, we actually made a note of that study because it does give us some very good lessons learned in comparisons to what other Maryland jurisdictions are undergoing by way of public facilities management, growth management. Also, we have booked the rooms already for George Howard, and I promise they keep the air conditioner on after work hours. So,
Thank you so
that
much.
is everything. The contact sheet that everyone has, could you just quickly look and make sure we have the information on it that you'd like us to use? And if you want to make any changes, just jot it down on a piece of paper and give it to one of us on your way out.
I know, yes.
And that's it.
Other than cold, turn on the refrigerator.
Thank you, everybody.